today I'll be walking you through all of our speakers that we have for you today. So today we'll be going through a lot of topics, especially around how to leverage open source and make the most out of platform. So our very first speaker is Marlene. Marlene is the co-chair. Just a minute here. So Marlene will be talking about GitHub Pages and walking you through how she uses GitHub Pages to for her work, for our open source work, and also Marlene is she's the vice chair and director of the Python Software Foundation, and it's a non-profit behind popular computing languages like Python, and she's also the co-founder of ZimboPy. It's a Zimbabwean non-profit that empowers women to pursue careers in technology. So without further ado, I'll be handing you guys over to Marlene to go through our talk.
Hi everyone, my name is Marlene, and I'm so excited to be with you today for this GitHub Africa meetup. It makes me so happy to know that we can come together as Africans from across the continent and be able to talk about the technology that we are working on. So today the title of my talk is Creating a More Open Web. And this talk is mainly going to be focused about how if you are interested in web development, how you can contribute to making the web more open and just being a part of that open source community. So before we get started on the talk, I wanted to tell you a little bit more about myself so that you can get to know me a bit better. First thing is that I'm calling you right now from Harare, Zimbabwe, and Zimbabwe is a country in the southern part of Africa. It's just above South Africa, and I've lived here for almost my entire life, and I have really enjoyed it. It also has a lot of interesting things that happen here. But definitely enjoy living here. Another thing about myself is that I am the current vice chair of the Python Software Foundation. And the PSF is the nonprofit organization behind the Python programming language. So if you are interested in finding more about what the PSF does or more about Python in general, feel free to visit python.org and click on the PSF tab. A third thing about myself is that I'm the current chair for PyCon Africa. And PyCon Africa is basically the annual Pan-African gathering of the Python community on the continent of Africa. And we just had our first conference in 2018 in Accra, Ghana. And it was such a great time where we had so many people from across the continent come and just talk about Python and learn together. And it was really, really such a great time. If you would like to attend or just get to know the Python community, feel free to follow us at PyCon Africa on Twitter. And then a final thing about myself is that I'm currently interning remotely with the Rapids team at NVIDIA. I work, as you can imagine, on quite a bit of Python programming, and I focus mainly on an open source Python library, GPU Python library that tries to accelerate data science using GPUs. It's really interesting and I really like it. You can feel free to visit rapids.ai, I think, or just follow Rapids AI on Twitter if you're interested in finding more about the project I'm working on. Right out of high school, I went to the United States and I was studying pre-medicine with molecular biology, and the intention was for me to start medical school right after my pre-medicine degree. And I remember I had a year where I came back home to Zimbabwe, and I was really wrestling in that year about, okay, is this really what I want to do with the rest of my life? Do I really want to be a doctor? And I was just thinking, I actually don't like blood. That's like the first thing. There's a lot of studying involved in this program that I didn't realize. There's lots of stuff going on, and I just wasn't enjoying it as much as I thought I would. And so during that year, it was also very expensive, and I was just like, I don't know, worse in the States, it's just very expensive. And so I decided to take a year off of school. And in that year, I wanted to experiment and explore things that I was interested in. So I started off just with this idea that I want to be more connected to the people in my local community. I want to help, particularly women, to become empowered and do really cool things with their lives. And I thought, okay, that's something that I would enjoy doing. And then in this pathway, I just started meeting lots of people who were very interesting. And at some point, I teamed up with my co-founders, and we all really were interested in technology. And I thought this is a really great thing to teach people, and also a cool thing for me to find out more about myself, because I was very interested in technology as well, but hadn't taken the time to really study it. So I decided to create an organization. I said, okay, I'm going to create a nonprofit organization. And this is an idea that I had. We decided to call it Zimbo Pi. And so I was like, okay, great. I need a website. I now have this organization. We're going to be teaching girls how to code in Python. We need a website. So I went online, Googled, got a domain name. I was a beginner at that point and didn't really know much about web development. So WordPress, I just was like, okay, WordPress could be a bit difficult because I don't know. I was just thinking a lot of things at the time. And so I just bought a domain name, and I decided I wanted to get sort of a custom African design. Also, I wasn't finding the African designs that I wanted to online. And so I found a graphic designer who had like sort of an African feel to her designs. And we started discussing with each other and working on sort of a design that we thought would be good for this site. And then at that point, after talking to this designer, we started trying to build the site. She said it would be easier to create it on Wix. So I said, okay, let's go ahead and do that. So paid money for this graphic designer, paid money for this domain name, paid money for hosting on Wix to find hosting. And I don't know, I think for Wix, I'm not sure how much it is a year, but it's quite a good amount of money. I think you pay like a monthly amount as well so you pay a monthly amount for hosting, and you also pay an amount as well each year for your domain name. So this was money racking up. And I was just like, and my parents were just like, my sister, are you sure that this is gonna give us back this money that you are taking from us? I actually got most of the money from my parents to start off. So, quite a lot of startup costs in that time period. And from that process of first having this idea of wanting to create the website for this organization to the time where we actually had a functioning website up and running, it was about a month, maybe even more, maybe like 2 months or something. And it took quite a lot of time working with the designer, and also figuring out how to get the funds to convincing people to give me money to get the funds to put this website up as well. So at that point, so that happened, and we got started, and it was fantastic. We started this organization, and I also started getting more interested in the development process itself. And a while later, I decided, after getting more involved with the open source community, and also doing more things like talking and joining all these software communities, I decided, okay, I also want to make a new website. I want to make a personal website for myself. But when I thought about it, I was just like, okay, there has got to be a better way. When I thought about the first time I had created this website, I was like, I want to be, there are a couple of things that I want this experience to have that should be different from when I last created this website. So the first thing was that I want the process to be faster. I don't want to take a month for me to get this website up and running. It should take as little time as possible. And then another thing is I want it to be just my own website. I want to host it with like only my things there. So I don't want to use like a blogging site where I could like blog, but it's just like I don't know. I just wanted to be mine. And then I wanted it to also be cheaper. I didn't want to spend as much money as I had before, and I wanted to also continue to choose a style that worked for me, something that I felt I could also kind of express myself through. I also wanted it to be minimal, like a bit more minimalistic than my previous site was. So all of these things came up, and I was just like, okay. I had by that time done a bit of web development with Django. I'd also done a bit of web development with sort of WordPress and things like that. But all of those, I was just like, it just feels like it's going to take a lot of work. And I just don't know if I want to spend all that time. So as I was thinking about all of this and I was trying to figure out, okay, how do I get up and running as quick as possible and do all of these things that meet all of these criteria in a short amount of time and as little effort as possible? So I started Googling around and trying to find some options there. There were lots of options that would have required lots of work on my part, and I didn't really want to do too much work. And so I was also really a little bit tired of Googling, so I decided to visit the tech world's source of all wisdom, the tree of the knowledge of good and evil in the tech world. I decided to visit tech Twitter. Tech Twitter is always filled with so much good advice and people who just want nothing but the best for you. I'm joking. Sometimes it's really dangerous and it's really terrible. Sometimes tech Twitter, who knows? It depends. But that day, fortunately for me, someone from the Python community, his name's Anthony Shore, just put out a tweet and he was talking about how he had moved his website, his personal site from Medium all the way to, and he had changed it and moved it to GitHub Pages. And he was just listing some reasons about why he felt like this was a better decision and how he was really enjoying it and the layout was great and also that it was free. And so for me, the word free, the word free jumped out at me. And I said, okay, this is great. This is great. I'm going to try this out. So I went ahead and I looked at Anthony's website. I really liked it. I even really liked the design. It was minimalist. And yeah, I was just like, wow, all of this for free. So I decided, okay, let me check out GitHub Pages and see if this could work for me. So GitHub Pages has a number of really great advantages that come with it. One of the things is that it has completely free hosting. So you can, as long as you are using their site, it's going to be, your website is going to be hosted for free and you're not going to be getting that either monthly charge or yearly charge that you would pay with other sites. Something else is that you get a free domain name, like a github.io domain name, if you want to use that, or you could also get, you could use your own custom name, which I wanted to do, your own domain name, without paying like an additional fee for that custom name being added to your site, which is great. It's very different from other sites that sometimes let you host on their website for free, but then will charge you for adding your own personal domain name. And then another thing about it, it was a really simple workflow to be able to get it up and running your site. It just takes such a short period of time. You use the git commit and git push commands to be able to update your website if you want to update it. And as well, you can be able to choose from a number of different designs and patterns using Jekyll. So far, we've already seen that, just from looking at the properties that GitHub Pages has, we've already knocked out 3 of those 4 major things that I wanted to make sure that I had this time when setting up my website. The final thing as well is to talk about how quick and easy is it to get started with GitHub Pages. And the great thing is that GitHub, I think, has done a really great job on their page to show you just how to get started in 5 easy steps with GitHub Pages. So you can I'm just going to navigate to the page just to show you how simple it looks and how, to me, it was pretty easy getting started. You have the 5 steps. So the first thing you want to do is create a repository for your site. Then you get to choose sort of which pathway you want to take. What sort of GitHub client are you using? So whether you're using the terminal or GitHub desktop, or you're not sure. And then there's some like 3 other steps that you take to be able to get up and running on your site. And all of the instructions are really clear and they're there on the website. So really quite simple to quite straightforward, I would say. Maybe not simple, but quite straightforward to get up and running with GitHub Pages on your website. So a couple of things I think that's just amazing. I will mention, I'll stop here and just say, I think it's amazing that you're able to get up and running so quickly with GitHub Pages. Wow. So this is really great. This is nice. This is exciting. We're able to do all of these things. We're able to get up and running really nicely. Something that I was thinking about a bit later that I would like to talk to you about now as well, because this is an African meetup, is that I felt that, like, as I've been looking through the web and also different open source options, I did feel like there's sort of this void when it comes to African designs. So one of the things as well, when I was creating my initial site, was that I had to pay quite a lot of money to get a graphic designer to work with me so I could get African inspired designs for my website. And it would be really nice to have templates somewhere on the web, the open web, to be able to create sites pretty easily and quickly with templates that have sort of African designs, something that's inspired by African culture. And I know African culture is so diverse and also so layered, but at the same time we have so many designs that are like, you can tell, wow, that's an African design, I like that, this is great. And so I would love to see African people participating in open source to be able to make the web also not only more open but also more African feeling. So I don't know if that makes sense, but yeah. So why should you participate in being able to do that? And why should you be interested in open source? I'm going to take a little bit of time to talk about that. So there are a couple of reasons. I listed down 4 that I could think about when it comes to why you should be participating in open source. And the first reason is that I feel that it's a great way to contribute to the knowledge that's available. Like I said, the more, if we as Africans are contributing to knowledge and to the web, then there's an influence from African people, and the web doesn't just take from, standard European or American designs, and we have a say in being able to do that. And I think that's an amazing opportunity for us. Another thing is that it allows you to learn. So as I go through different open source projects and I'm able to contribute to these projects, I get to read other people's code. I'm able to understand, okay, this is how they think when they're creating something. And I'm able to look at different projects and see that, oh, I can actually build something that's really big just by looking at the open source code. The third thing is that you get to be part of a really large community. Something that's been really helpful in my journey in tech has been being able to be a part of the Python open source community. Just because there's been so many opportunities for me to meet amazing people, for me to get help when I needed help with learning a concept, or if I needed help with with doing anything, that community is a really key part of that. And then a final thing is also that you get to build a profile, so a professional profile. If people see that you are a regular contributor to open source, they will definitely, I think there's definitely an increase in the likelihood that you would be able to land a tech job. And I know for myself, a part of me being able to have the opportunities that I've been able to have has been because I've been so active in the open source area. Not always as well, just contributing to code, but even just contributing to the community, as I mentioned before. So these are all really nice things about open source and how you can get involved as well in making the web more open and I hope more African. So before we go, obviously I've been talking about this very cool site that I was able to build using GitHub Pages, and it's still up today. I don't want to show you the page through in this talk because I would like you to visit my website. It's marlenemhangami.com, and I think it's very cool. I think it came out really nicely. Remember, I wanted that minimalist design, and yeah, if you want to check it out, feel free to visit my website. And if you do, please go ahead and give me a shout out on Twitter and let me know what you think about it. But only if you think it's nice. If you don't think it's nice, don't let me know what you think about it. But this has been really, really fun. I've really enjoyed being able to talk with you. If you have any more questions, I'll be hanging out afterwards in the Zoom call, or you can hit me up on Twitter or GitHub or Clubhouse. I've actually just joined Clubhouse, so feel free to also connect with me there. My username there is MarleneZW. On Twitter, it's Marlene_ZW. So thank you so much for listening, and I hope you get involved in making the web more open. Hi, everyone.
Wow, Marlene, that was a really great talk. Thank you so much for all of your advice for people that are looking to get started with open source. I definitely hear you on trying to figure out your design cues for your first website, trying to figure out, should I use Wix? Should I use should I build it myself from scratch? So definitely using GitHub Pages was a good way for you to get it off the ground and tying it to your own personal domain name. That's pretty powerful. And one key takeaway from your talk was making the web, making designs more African. So a good cue for my African brothers and sisters, definitely try out design cues, contributes to open source, but contribute to different designs that show more of African culture and definitely make the web more open and also more African. So thank you so much, Marlene, for that great talk. So our next speaker is Sharon Jebitok. So Sharon is from Kenya. She's a software developer at Microverse Inc. And she's also a student from Kenya. And specifically during our talk today, she'll be talking around GitHub Actions and how you use GitHub Actions linters, and also she will be talking about how you use those linters to fix errors within your code, and making sure that your code is as foolproof and as free of vulnerabilities as much as possible. So I would hand it over to Sharon to kick us off.
Hello everyone, my name is Sharon Jebitok. I'm a software developer and a student at Microverse, and I'm also from Kenya. First of all, I would like to say thank you to Martins and the organizers of this event for giving me a chance to be part of the speakers today. So today I'm going to talk about how to use GitHub Actions to run linters. So first of all, what is GitHub Actions? So GitHub Actions is a continuous integration and continuous development service offered by GitHub. It allows you to automate your workflow by letting GitHub take care of a number of tasks that can be triggered by different events on the platform. So GitHub Actions can even let you add a specific way that when you have a first-time contributor, they can get a congratulations message for contributing to open source for the first time. And we'll also see how GitHub Actions lets us to run the linters. So what is a linter? So a linter is a tool that analyzes source code to flag programming errors, bugs, stylistic errors, and suspicious constructs. So we are going to see more about linters. So we'll start with the uses of a linter. So one of the uses, it catches code error. Catching syntax errors is more efficient. There is no need to debug simple mistakes like typos. The linter does it for you. Another use, it improves the quality. So programmers can focus on solving problems instead of cleaning up the code. And the entire code base looks like it was written by one person. High quality code. What does it mean to have high quality code? One, it does what it is supposed to do. Like it meets the requirements of any software. Another thing is it does not contain defects or problems, and it is easy to read, maintain, and extend. So there are two categories of linters. One is the logical lint, which checks with potentially unintended results. It also checks dangerous code patterns, and it checks code errors. The other category is the stylistic lint. It checks code not conforming to defined conventions. So there are linters specific to a programming language. So you can find linters for most programming languages. For example, Robocop for Ruby and ESLint for JavaScript, and maybe WebHint for HTML. So there are three ways of implementing the linters. One, you can use the text editor plugin. So most of us use VS Code, and we know about the VS Code extensions. So you can find the extensions like ESLint, Robocop, and WebHint, which also works the same way, which we are going to see how the GitHub Actions will be working with the linters. The other way of implementing the linters is using the GitHub Actions and the GitHub applications. So we are going to see the main topic of today, which is running linters using GitHub Actions. So first of all, you have to set up GitHub Actions on your root project folder. So on your root project folder, you'll create a folder called .github, and inside the .github folder, you'll also create a workflows folder. And inside the workflows folder, you create a linters.yml file. And there is a specific linters.yml file for depending on the project that you're working on. So where to get the linters? You can visit the Actions Marketplace to check appropriate linter for your project. And some open source projects or organizations will provide you with linters on their documentation. So here are the links for the GitHub Marketplace for Actions. So you can find maybe on the superlint or the lint action. And there are many places where you can get the linters also. The other thing is about setting up the linters on your project. So depending on the programming language or the language that you're working on your project, you can add the linter related to it. So let's say you are working on a Ruby project. You can now add the Ruby dot .yml file, which will be the linter for your project. So once, let's say you're working on a Ruby project, once you're done working on your project, you can go ahead and create a pull request. Even if it was a JavaScript project and you're done working on your project and you had added the linters and also the GitHub Actions, you can go ahead, after committing your code to GitHub, you can create a pull request so that the GitHub Actions can run the linters. So when creating the pull request, first of all, you have to ensure that for linters to be effective, you have to ensure that you adhere to the Git workflow. You have to use the branches and do not push your code directly to the master branch. You have to create a pull request in order for the GitHub Actions to run linters or test effectively. So here are some of the cases when immediately you create a pull request, the GitHub Actions are automated. So immediately you create a pull request, you can check the lower page of your pull request page. You can see, for example, for this first case, the GitHub Actions has already run 2 checks that was successful, and it is still running. So we still have 1 in progress. And for this second case, the GitHub Actions has completed running the checks, and we can see that we only have 1 successful check, that 1 check was successful and 2 were unsuccessful. So on these unsuccessful ones, you can see that beside it, you have the details part. So you can click on the details, and this will, the details of how or what to fix. It gives you an hint. So when you click on the details, it will take you to a page like this one. And on the first line, it will give you a command that you can learn, or you can run on your terminal to help you flag off the linter errors. And these details shows you the specific line of code that has the errors, and it shows you which error you're having, like which linter error you're having. For example, this one, it is talking about it was expected indentation was supposed to be 2 spaces. So here it is showing you that it is an indentation error. So you have to go back to your project folder and fix the error. Then you can also push your code back to GitHub, and immediately when you push your code to GitHub, the GitHub Actions will run the checks, and in case it was unsuccessful, you'll immediately receive let's say an email notification that the checks were unsuccessful, and you have to also go back and fix. So for this last case, all checks have passed, so everything is good here. So you're good to go, request for a code review or merge your pull request. So you can also make your own linter and open source it as a developer or a DevOps or a data scientist or anyone in the open source community. So I'll finish with this quote, which says that only the disciplined ones are free in life. This is a quote by Eliud Kipchoge. So you can connect with me on these platforms. You can connect on GitHub or Ashnode or Twitter using these handles. So thank you all for listening.
Awesome. Awesome. Thank you, Sharon. That was a great talk. In just talking about how you use linters to fix code errors. And the cool thing is you can see all of that within your GitHub UI, and you really see all the details around the errors you find and how to fix some of those errors. So great job there, Sharon, walking us through all of your talk. We really appreciate that. And so the next speaker is Chiamaka Okenwa. Chiamaka is a Nigerian, and she's also a software engineer working working in the fintech industry, and she's very passionate about developers. She's active in developer communities in Africa, and she has also served as a developer advocate at Unstack Africa. So specifically, Chiamaka will be talking about GitHub Gist and basically a better way to share code. And so definitely take it away, Chiamaka. Thank you so much.
Okay. All right. Thank you so much, Martin. It's a pleasure to be here. So I'll just go about sharing my screen. Okay. All right. So today I'm going to be presenting on 2 topics, which is, okay. Yeah. All right. So welcome, everyone. And my name is Chiamaka Okenwa. I am a software engineer. I currently work for ReadMe in Lagos, Nigeria. And then I'm also a developer advocate at Unstack Africa. So today I'm going to be talking about 2 important topics, which is the GitHub Gist, a better way for code sharing, and then the ReadMe, a guide for your GitHub project. So this is just a brief intro about me. I also have my Twitter and my LinkedIn, so you can all reach out to me there. Yeah, so let's get into it. GitHub Gist. So for me, I first came across GitHub Gist when I was writing an article on Medium, and I was thinking of a better way to share my code. So I didn't want to have to just take a snapshot of it on my IDE. I wanted something that was a bit more interactive. So I then stumbled upon the GitHub Gist feature, which is actually just provided by GitHub. It's an easy way to share snippets of your code or files and many more things you can do with it. So a gist can either be public or private. So when it's public, that means everyone can access it, just basically from the browser. And then when it's private, that means it's only if you're given the link to that gist and you are able to access it. So gists are usually GitHub repositories, and they can be cloned or forked by anybody. Yeah, so interesting. How do we go about creating the gist? So the good thing now is that you don't have to have a GitHub account before you can create gists. But if you do have a GitHub account, even better. So you can actually just sign into GitHub, and then there's the top right corner on where you can specify that you want to create a new gist. You can see from images here and here. So this is actually what the gist GitHub page looks like. So if you go to gist.github.com, and then this is just a picture of what the page looks like. So interesting, you can add files, you can write comments on your gist. It makes it a lot more interactive. You can get to review your gist. You can see as many of your gist as you like. And the coolest part of having the gist feature is that you're able to embed that in your website or in your blogs or just anywhere you want it to be. So this is what it looks like just from having it on Medium. It's just basically a file. And then you can see here, social icons hosted with love by GitHub. So how are there the ways that you can use gist? So you can use it to maintain a task list. You can embed it in web pages. You can use it as a writing platform. You can write text anonymously in case you don't want people to know, oh, okay, I'm actually the one that did that. And you can also upload images to a gist and then associate it with like multiple files if you have just additional files or anything that you want to upload. So that's just a brief intro about gists. My next topic is actually the README. Most people who use GitHub would have come across the README because when you're creating a repository, you see the, would you like to add a README? And then you can either just decide to add it or not. But the interesting thing about README is that it uses the Markdown syntax. So the Markdown is actually an extension. That's why the .md file stands for Markdown. And it's a markup language with a text formatting syntax. So this is just a brief on how you can go about creating your README. You have to have a GitHub account, and then you can create a new repository. And then right here, you can see the add a README file. And then you have this view right here on creating a new README. So usually people they don't only use README for your GitHub project. You can also use a README as your GitHub bio. So there are actually a lot of interesting bios out there that you see on GitHub, and it's actually the README that enables you to have that. So the README uses the Markdown, which is kind of similar to the HTML. So you have your H1 tags, H2, H3, H4. So just depending on the size of how you want your text to be. Then you can either make it bold, you can make it italic, you can have bullet points on your README. You can have a block quotes, which is just a sample right here. And this is just the scale through, and you have a horizontal row. So this is just basic syntaxes that you can use for creating your README. There are actually more interesting ones as well. You can also add images and files to your README as well. So this is a popular quote by Walt Disney, and it's the way to get started is to quit talking and start doing. So this is just the end of my talk, and I hope you guys enjoyed it.
All right, thank you, Chiamaka. I love that quote at the end of your talk. Start doing. Stop talking, start doing. Definitely trying to encourage everyone here to, there's so much information online. There's so much information on open source, GitHub, so many resources you can use to get started. So stop thinking, stop, imagining, just start doing, reading stuff online, and making use of all the resources you have on GitHub. And definitely these meetups are meant to engage with our communities all around Africa, and also to show and invest in Africa eventually, and make sure that we're supporting developers in Africa. So definitely go to. It looks like my colleague Brian is sending some links on YouTube. So definitely go check out his links. And also now I want to hand over to Brian. Brian is our developer advocate here at GitHub, and he'll be, giving us some words of wisdom today.
Sorry, I was just muted. I caught it. But yeah, Martins, thank you very much for the introduction. And I have been dropping a bunch of links, watching all these talks. It's been a lot of fun to be here for the GitHub Africa meetup. I'm actually based here in Florida right now, and I work here at GitHub and as a staff developer advocate, and going to talk about DevOps real quick. DevOps is a term that I've always been aware of, and never really spent a lot of time sort of researching, but on this channel, you can actually find a What's Next for DevOps video on the YouTube channel. So definitely check it out. I hosted a panel on the topic. But what I learned is DevOps is really around, it's more than just automation. Sometimes people talk about automation when it comes to DevOps, but it's focused on improving collaboration across teams and getting yourself back to writing code, which is what this talk's going to be about. So you're probably already familiar with GitHub because you've been sitting here on the GitHub YouTube channel watching the GitHub Africa meetup, learning about all these all these existing GitHub features like gist and pages and GitHub Actions. So I'll spare you the introduction to GitHub, but this talk is going to focus around these three concepts: home for these things, that the pillars that GitHub sort of stands on today, and it's home for code in the cloud. So as we learned through gist and also with repos, you can put your code on GitHub and have access to it from whatever machine you're working on. Whatever person on your team can also collaborate as well. The other thing is collaboration at scale. We saw this year with everybody moving towards 100% being remote, teams no longer meeting in the office. Some teams have gone back to the office and then got back home and then also come back to the office. So we're seeing collaboration at scale really be a real focal point of how we sort of get code shipped. And then also, one thing I'm going to share as well is this open source. Build on what's built. There's a lot of conversations around GitHub Pages and Vercel and Netlify. These are all problems that were solved on the top of tools like Kubernetes. Kubernetes is an existing open source project, and Kubernetes is one of them, but there's a couple other open source projects that powers this cloud that we're all benefiting from. It's all solved problems. So let's all leverage these solved problems and then build the next solution. So I joke that I'm Queen Bee here at GitHub, Beyonce of GitHub. I'm a Beyonce advocate, but really a developer advocate. And my real purpose here is to go to bat for the hive. So if you are using GitHub, if you need a link for the student developer pack, which I threw in the chat earlier, I'm here to help support folks and users of GitHub, and that's my number one goal. So talking about home for code in the cloud, this is actually from our current homepage. Actually, we just updated last month, actually 2 months ago, December, and yeah, it's really nice. But it really has all the sort of bullet points I need to talk about. Which on the bottom left, you'll see that we're 56 million developers worldwide. So we have 3 million plus organizations, 100 million plus repositories, and a lot of big companies use GitHub. That's really impactful. And it's nice to see that because what that means is there's a lot of solved solutions out there on GitHub that you can leverage to help solve your problems. This is everything you need to know about me. If you go to my profile, bdougie, you'll find out all the people I sort of follow on GitHub as well as my repos or repositories. The beauty of this is that you could actually leverage my repositories as solved problems. So this is my GitHub profile README. I've basically recreated a MySpace page as my profile README. Definitely, I have a blog post about that if you want to learn how I built that and why. Definitely check it out. But I love the fact that I can actually just link my GitHub account as my business card, as my title card of where you can actually discover who I am and what sort of value I provide to the open source community. Just go to my README. The other thing I want to talk about is collaboration at scale, and something that I think a lot of us are familiar with. If you've leveraged Git, some of us are brand new, but this is my sort of evolution of my index.js file. Back in the day when I used to write code, when I was learning how to code, I would just save stuff locally on my machine. And every time I hit save, it would represent just one of these dots here. So if I save a new file, I get a new dot, and it's like linear. But sorry, I actually skipped a bunch of slides because I was worried that I wouldn't have enough time. But what I'm getting at is that with Git, Git is something that GitHub is built on top of. It's source control. It actually provides us a way to not only just save our stuff, but also give options for other people to collaborate with us between branches and pull requests and merging. So the whole GitHub flow is in existence, and it's helped us to sort of move past how do we sort of store files, but also how do we share across countries and counties and zip codes and area codes. That's also a solved problem and a better way for us to collaborate. One thing I do want to focus on too as well is automation. So we heard a bit about this with the talk on GitHub Actions and how you can leverage that with linters from Sharon. And automation is really key on how to basically get ourselves out of this doing the mundane, minute things like checking to see if our code is committed to the same structure as our coworker. So linting gives us that structure. GitHub Actions is built on top of a bunch of different primitives at GitHub. So the API, webhooks, authentication, those are all things that normally you would have to build and connect on your own. The beauty of GitHub Actions is that you actually have the ability to have access to GitHub Actions just by opening up a repo. You can build your own actions. You can leverage actions in the marketplace. The world is basically your oyster. But what I want to focus on is the idea of taking tasks that are repetitive. So as mentioned before in the other talk about linting, it's a repetitive task to constantly tell your coworkers to make sure you structure your code with 2 spaces or 1 tab or whatever the structure it needs to be, rather than continually going back and reviewing code and pushing back on that existence. Instead, let the GitHub action actually automate that process for you. So that way everybody can just be happy and go back to writing code. I always joke that let the robots do the job, or let the robots do the complaining about someone's code. And one thing that I want to point out too as well is like those primitives have been rebuilt multiple times. We saw this with Probot and OctoKit being the SDK for the GitHub API, Probot being the SDK for building a GitHub app really quick. Those are solved solutions that we are able to take to GitHub Actions and relearn and ship as a GitHub action. It's a great experience. I definitely recommend folks definitely check that out. But it gives us an opportunity to listen to the hooks, like webhooks. Different events triggered within our repository can trigger different events. And one of those events that people like to sort of point GitHub Actions to is CI. So CI being the ability to automate the integration of your project, the testing, the linting, the right before you get the bundling of the deployed version of your application, your website, whatever it is. Like good CIs, they sort of just automatically just work, as you can see on this conveyor belt, treadmill. So this is sort of the life cycle of a continuous integration. You commit changes with source control, you build your project, you run test, you eventually get it on a staging environment, which is recommended. So folks on the team can then check to see if it actually works before you actually go to production. So that's the idea of workflow automation, source control, build confidence. One example that I wanted to bring up, and I bring this up probably way too much, which is the idea of GitHub, GitHub.com, removing jQuery from GitHub.com. I bring it up too much because it was a couple years ago, and I probably bring this up in a talk every other month. But I love this example because jQuery is it's a way to integrate JavaScript, modern JavaScript into your website. Maybe it's not as modern as people think of it today, but what we've seen is JavaScript's advance to pass to the point where you don't actually need jQuery to do some of the most minute things in JavaScript. So GitHub made the decision to remove jQuery from the site because we weren't using it to the fullest extent of its ability. So at the time of you pushing your code and opening a pull request on GitHub, they had actually a CI integration that would check your code and see if there's any jQuery in it. And at that point, and this, I recommend check out this article, but it would actually recommend the JavaScript to write instead of the jQuery. So now you have bots who are now writing code for you and making suggestions on how to write your code better. And again, this is jQuery to JavaScript. You're completely just compiling it into something different. And then you can sort of walk away without needing the stress of like trying to understand, I know I can write this in JavaScript, but I'm faster in jQuery. I don't want to go through the pain of trying to figure this out. And imagine your junior developers, the mid-level developers who maybe not be up to speed of, maybe it's not jQuery, maybe it's going from JavaScript to TypeScript. You can actually automate the process of mentoring folks into writing TypeScript over JavaScript or whatever it is. So consider that as far as like your DevOps campaign and integration. And I do want to point out and take a step aside. DevOps is really around, like anybody can actually benefit from DevOps, but also provide value. And it's just really finding out places where there's opportunity to improve the developer workflow and then just doing that. So as I mentioned, there's a good chance that you make pull requests on your team. If you're working full-time at a company, you're going to review pull requests once a day. So what sort of automation can you build into that experience for pull request? And I want to talk briefly about my open source introduction into the story and what the value I got out of GitHub. But building on what's been built. And I talk about my open source path into getting an open source, which is I had a problem where I had to solve getting a running web server up and running pretty consistently. And I didn't know how to do that in Node.js. And at the time, the best examples I could find on the internet in Stack Overflow was in Node.js. So really quickly, I Googled it, found a solution on GitHub, github.com. There was an open source solution to basically run a node server, solve my problem. My other problem is I didn't know Node.js. What was nice about this is an email exchange that I had with the maintainer of the project, who actually went back and forth with me to actually teach me how Node worked. And then eventually we got to the point where we sort of succeeded. I was able to move on, ship the thing into production. And then he finally told me that he's an American, but he was actually in Thailand at a K-pop concert the entire time that I was actually interacting with him. So he was actually emailing me from his phone while he was enjoying this K-pop group, which I don't actually know the name of the group. But what I'm getting at is open source is valuable to your career. Open source, it sort of levels you up and gives you sort of like the next step. So I don't have to go and build my Node servers from scratch. I can actually find something on GitHub or Stack Overflow and get myself like the first step done and then move forward. You see a lot of IT organizations, open sources, 90% of their organizations are using something open source. When it comes to getting jobs, the demand for open source, and I recommend, I'm going to breeze through this because I want to do some live examples because I was watching the chat and I do have some answers to some of the questions that were in the chat so far. So I'm going to jump into a live example right after the slide. But what I'm getting at is that open source, it could be the difference of you getting your next job, your first job, yeah, basically, I was just say last job, but that sounds kind of morbid. But what I'm getting at is open source could be the difference of this knowledge, execution, interest as well. So highly recommend leverage open source. So I say this because there's a couple things that came up in the chat. So when we talked about GitHub Pages earlier, GitHub Pages is a great tool. It's a great introductory tool. What happens is that you don't have any running servers with GitHub Pages. The whole gimmick is that you want to actually bundle your static assets. So I bring this up because we have the site called stars.github.com. So this site is hosted on GitHub Pages, and it's actually hosted with, it's actually built with Nux. Nux being the sort of Vue static site generated. Well, it's more than just static site generation, but it's a Vue library. And the way we run this is we actually deploy it from a GitHub action. So this is the GitHub action. This is actually, unfortunately, not open source. So feel free to take a screenshot if you want to learn and see how this works. But we have a GitHub action workflow. It actually has a cron that actually runs on the 15th minute of the hour, just to pull in the other updates. But the thing I want to point out is, like, when you compare GitHub Pages to things like Netlify or Vercel, the things that GitHub Pages doesn't have is the sort of build pipeline. Like, it's not going to build your site for you. But the thing about GitHub Actions is that you can add that build pipeline in there for you. So here, I'm actually leveraging a hand-built build pipeline, which we're leveraging Node.js. We're setting that up here with another GitHub action. We're caching the previously bundled node modules using the cached action. And then we're also installing NPM, which you don't need that. The benefit of this is that we're actually caching node modules, so it only will NPM install if there's a difference. And then finally, the thing that we don't get from GitHub Pages, which we can add through a GitHub action, is the way to generate the bundled, statically versioned application, the website. So we're actually running generate, which is going to be our Nux command, generating with our environment variables. And then that's going to be finally deployed to GitHub Pages. And we're using Crazy Max's GitHub Pages action. So I say all that because we rebuilt some like trivial features. Actually, it's not even a trivial feature. It's an amazing feature that Netlify and Vercel give you out of the box. But we're able to leverage this at GitHub just through a GitHub action. So you could probably keep going down the rabbit hole. Like, this is not a CDN, so like you do get a free CDN out of Vercel and Netlify. But if you're just looking to bundle and get something on GitHub Pages, this is a good first step as well. The other thing I wanted to bring up too as well is the fact that this MySpace page that I'm bundling, this is also powered by a GitHub action. So this is not production ready code, but what I'm doing here is I am basically taking anybody who opens up an issue on my project. You can see on my issues, whenever it's opened or edited, I'm actually going to be creating a file, which then puts people into my MySpace page. So this top 8 right here, everything is added to a developers.yaml. I do encourage you to definitely check out my project. I don't have time to actually go into detail on how this works, but you can see the YAML file. You see all my friends and their sort of expertise right here. and that's what gets generated right here as well. And then finally, I just wanted to bring up one other thing, which is how to basically automate a process that I usually don't pay attention enough to, which is my website, which is BW Live. This is a project I have to basically host my live streams. I live stream every Tuesday and Friday on Twitch. And here I sort of have these little blog posts that sort of tell people what I'm working on the live stream. So I sort of keep a running doc with comments as well to be able to tell people what you'll see. It's all powered by GitHub. It's powered by GitHub repo, which is this repo. I just wanted to point out this as well. You can see the making the Baybot is actually, where is the Baybot? Oh, TwitchBot. That stuff that we just saw is actually a GitHub issue. So my entire backend is a GitHub repo, but I bring that up because it's not relevant. I just wanted to point that out. The one thing I did want to point out is the reason I have these images that I have hosted on my site. When I host images on a CDN, it could be super expensive. So I have this image compression workflow. So every time I add a JPEG, a PNG, a WebP, it's going to compress those images to a smaller version. So to sort of explain this, and again, this is all open source. So if you want to dig in and you want to find out how this works, definitely check it out. I do some blog posts. Actually, I did a blog post a couple days ago on it. But what I want to do is to show you in real time what this looks like. And I realized that the image folder is red herring. What I need to do is upload here. So I'm going to add a file. I'm going to upload a file to my images. I've already prepared a file that's about 1 megabyte. It's entirely too large to be on my site. So I'm uploading this image, and then I'm going to create a pull request just for the sake of showing you how this automation works. Looks like I'm getting a 400. I don't know why. Let's try this one more time. All right, so I'm going to see if that worked. What was it, BW patch 3? Okay, we'll try it one more time. If it doesn't work, I will cut over to an example that I already have this done in. Because if for live demos, you definitely want to always have a something already sitting in an oven ready to take out. So let's do this one more time. Upload my big image. Create a, okay, I don't know why this is 404ing, but let's imagine that this actually worked. And we'll go into my previous uploaded image. But what I wanted to show you is the fact that when I do upload images, I do get compression that happens live on the fly. So I didn't get to show my 1 megabit image. I was hoping that maybe the image is too large, but I was hoping that you could see the 1 megabits go down to KBs. But you could see my previously uploaded images. We do get some reduction in cost. So I do have a 130 KB image. It actually gets reduced at the time of PR. So this is something I'm really bad at. And this is what I'm talking about DevOps, automating yourself back into writing code and not actually trying to compress images on the fly every time you open a PR. So the fact that I can now go down 62%, I don't have to worry about when people look at my site if I'm sending too large of images. So that was my example. I probably took too much time trying to figure out why I'm 404ing. But I do want to point out that every Friday we host a guest Open Source Friday where we talk through open source maintainers and how to leverage their projects, but also get insight on how they sort of collaborate on their teams. And we had a chance to talk with Gregor, who's on the bottom left. He manages 25 plus repos, which is the OctaKit org. 25 plus repos, and the way he does that is through GitHub projects and automation. So if you're interested in checking out his conversation with me on the YouTube channel, there's an Open Source Friday playlist. You can find Gregor's chat where he leverages automation to automate the merging of pull requests by actually adding just triggers onto his title. So when he adds the word feet, that will actually leverage it will make the PR get merged and then trigger a release for his entire project. So I don't have time, mainly due to uploading bugs, of explaining that in more detail. But I do recommend, if you have any interest, reach out to me. I'm pretty available. I'm on Twitter. I'm on GitHub. My email is available somehow, somewhere. I'm not sure where it's at, but bw@github. And thank you for joining the GitHub Africa Meetup. And again, this is my information as well. So thanks again. And Martins, back to you.
All right, thank you, Brian. I really appreciate your talk. So how I would definitely encourage folks watching online to join Brian on Friday for Open Source Fridays. That's a great way to learn about how people are thinking about open source software, contributing to open source software, maintaining repositories, and just getting started. I've seen some comments in the chat on YouTube. People thinking about how they would get started to be a professional code developer, open source, contributing to open source repositories or open source projects online on GitHub. It's a great way to get started. Even if it's just working on ReadMe files for a project you like, and then starting to look at the code and working your way slowly as you go along. So that's a great way to get started as a professional developer. And there's a lot of free tutorials online that you can start with, even on YouTube. Many people started coding just watching YouTube videos, and then going deeper and deeper from there. So like Chiamaka said, stop talking, it's time to start doing. So definitely thank you, Brian, for your talk. And so this is like the end of our meetup today. We would be on Zoom. We'll be going over to Zoom. If you have any questions you want to ask any of our speakers, definitely come join us on Zoom. It looks like the Zoom link will be posted on YouTube, and you can just click on that and join us on Zoom. And we'll have another meetup next month, and we'll keep doing this virtually until we can physically come to Africa or in the future. I hope you guys are all staying safe and taking care of yourselves. So this will be the end of the meetup. I'll see you guys in Zoom. Thank you so much, all the speakers. Thank you, Marlene. Thank you, Sharon. Thank you, Chiamaka. Thank you, Brian. And until next time, I love you guys, and God bless. Thank you. Bye-bye.